This intellectual cleansing has to continue in order to maintain the illusions, the strength of the illusions that maintain control and power over the masses. Part of the ethnic cleansing is to remove that threaten the current interpretation of reality. For the majority who have been watching this channel, understand the importance of cosmology, modern science, the entertainment industry, ancestral breakdowns of reality. All of these are known as critical anchor points that are used as a way to express intellectual dominance over the mainstream masses. Back in the day, the control was based upon an authority given to the king and the queen who ruled over everybody, an authority given to them by God. And since the mainstream interpretation of reality through the masses of people, through their minds, was interpreted through the religious lens of a human experience, God was the center. So if God was the center and the king and the queen are deemed an authority over you by God, then the king and the queen and everything that they are attached to becomes your center. You become secondary to this experience. You're just a pawn in the game of a higher order. And that order is the illusion. That hierarchy is the problem. It's what feeds the roots of all of the mind control programs, even as of today. Just instead of the power going through a king and a queen to rule over you, instead of religious power, today it's just deemed intellectual power. A power still handed down by God. They might not call it a God, but it's a power nonetheless handed down to them to rule over the masses. Today that power comes in resources, controlling of those resources. And how do you get control over those resources? Through your intellectual power to manipulate the capitalistic influence within society, within humanity.
Israel, in its tough guy, Joe Palooka cartoon approach to diplomacy and warfare and relations across the region, relies simply on its ability to beat the hell out of anybody and destroy the countries. And you're seeing it in Gaza today. It's unbelievable what they're doing. And physically destroying society's basic infrastructure and human needs. But it doesn't work. They don't realize all this does is generate greater resistance a year or two down the road with greater secrecy, higher technology levels, more coordination, and a stronger sense of defiance. And I should add here that, the Hezbollah and Hamas is an acronym for Haraka al-Muqawama al-Islamiyya, which means the Islamic Resistance Movement. Resistance is the key operative phrase in Hamas. Hezbollah calls itself, informally the resistance, al-Muqawama. And resistance is a key, maybe the key driver of what these groups and others in the region are doing. And the Israelis don't seem to understand this because they're the ones being resisted. Israel is the last remnant of 19th century European white settler racist colonialism. They came, they pushed out the Palestinians, who had 93% of the population of Palestine, and they created an Israeli state. They succeeded, but they only succeeded because they had tremendous support from the white racist colonial British, and now they have it from the Americans. So the colonial nature of this process, and it's still going on. They're still in the West Bank. Gangs of settlers are going around burning Palestinian villages. They've expelled 500 people from their villages in the last month or two, and they're still doing settler colonial expansion and driving out indigenous people. This is now the driving force for the resistance against Israel and against the United States and Europeans who joined them. This is the last anti-colonial struggle in the world, and that's why you see huge demonstrations all over the world.
That intelligence is what propels you into the realm of power over a few people, and keep going up, power over the masses. So a reconnection with your ancestral interpretations of reality, an interpretation, a breakdown and understanding of how they viewed the universe is a direct hit, is an immediate threat to where their power comes from.
Shows through in these county histories and also in the census records at the time. You find a person described in the 1860 census as an Indian. In the 1870 census, they're described as a person of color or a colored person. Same person, but the census taker, as part of the white dominant society, decides that this person is no longer Nipmuc. And why he decided to not call them Nipmuc people is really interesting. And for them, what an Indian was somebody who lived out in the forest, who lived maybe in a little teepee or a wetu someplace, who mainly lived by hunting or making baskets. And as he looked around at his neighbors at Hassananisco, he saw them as barbers, stone workers, factory workers, shoemakers, and he said, well, these people aren't living the way I think Indians live, so therefore I'm not going to call them Indians. I'm just going to assume that they've vanished. They're not living in the forest, so therefore they're not Indian, according to these folks.
When you talk about capitalism, you're talking about intelligence, a form of intelligence. When you're talking about corporations, you're talking about money, you're talking about control, secret societies. You're talking about moving of resources, moving of people, dismissing, disposing, eliminating of people, filtering of resources, filtering of information, withholding of resources, withholding of information.
X-Men, the X represents photo 51. Photo 51 was a picture taken in 1951 by Rosalind Franklin and Raymond Gosling that provided the picture that allowed the structure of DNA to be, discovered. The same year photo 51 was taken was the year that Henrietta Lacks transitioned, and her cervix was taken from her, unknowingly to her and her family, by a doctor, because she was the first cell that they were able to document that was a mortal cell line. And an immortalized cell line is a group of cells that can continue to replicate infinitely. So all the biology books, mitochondria, cells, blood that you know to this day, that you studied in school, has everything to do with the studies of these HeLa cells, Henrietta Lacks cells, that they got in 1951.
In the 1960s, there was a black man in Africa who came in with abilities complementary to those of Jesus. And he was performing miracles. He was starting to get people to listen to what he had to say. And the cabal tried to kill him, and, they could shoot him in the head, and his skull would just regenerate, and the flesh would grow back, and he was fine. And, so the crazy story that I heard, and remember, I was told at the time that if I disclosed this, that I would be killed, and I ended up putting it in the book anyway. The story was that this guy, they finally said, okay, we're going to bring you to the United Nations and share your message with the world. Let's get you on this flight. They bring him on this flight, and instead of bringing him to the United Nations, they shot him repeatedly, and then actually had some kind of meat grinder device, and basically like a bandsaw, I guess, and sawed up his body into a whole bunch of pieces, put him in these very like radioactive shielded containers, and then had all these fighter jets dock with the plane and fly his body parts to all corners of the world, where then these containers turned them into ash. And they thought that maybe this would defeat him, like that his body somehow, the tissue was necessary. So if they destroyed all the tissue in all these places across the world, maybe they could defeat him. Well, he then regenerated in their offices and was fully fine, fully intact. But the sad part is that he said, you guys so badly do not want me to be here that I am not going to be able to do any more. You're going to get what you want, but bear in mind that in the future, many others like me will be coming, and when they do, you will not be able to stop us.
In a world of death, deceit, destruction, and illusion, The withholding of truth is just as powerful as the truth itself, because what matters is who you're talking to. If your goal is to influence, if your goal is to have a truthful discussion, because if mistruth becomes the truth of a particular group of people, the truth will be seen as mistruth, conspiracy. And this is what we're dealing with today. You have masses of people who are walking around the world thinking that their truth, given to them by mistruth talkers, they think that is the truth. And since they outnumber those who unveil the truth, they believe the numbers are what control the truth. Same way money has become the controller of what is real and what is not real. Influence is what matters. Truth doesn't matter anymore. When you have masses and masses of people who are just completely dumbed down and are unable to think for themselves, truth is of no never mind anymore. Distraction is what matters. Flashiness matters. Who's around you matters. Who agrees with you, who doesn't agree with you, all of those things matter. And the influence that goes counter to the truth in a world of people who are guided by mistruth, that truth will be stamped with a code of deceit, lies, mistruth, before they can even open up to even entertaining that discussion. Because just as truth is out there, people who adopt mistruth as their truth that mistruth becomes their truth. And whether it's a mistruth or not, it's their truth. And their truth is the truth to them. When you're talking about somebody's truth, you're entering into another universe. That creator being has designed an entire universe in their creator mind and has projected that into the world and has received confirmation not only from other people, but from powerful, powerful influences in this realm. They have come back to themselves with a confirmation that says, this interpretation of reality, this interpretation of the universe, this is real. This is the truth. I see the sun. I see the moon. I see the clouds. I see the stars. This is what it is. Challenging that interpretation of reality is like telling somebody that the nose on their face isn't a nose. That's a hand. They've known what is true for years, decades, generations of information, generations of interpretation handed down to them, pumped through institutions, the university system, public education, political systems, Hollywood, every single system that they deem as real, important, valid, they all agree what the truth is. And if that truth is mistruth, you don't have a chance in hell in communicating with somebody like that. Every single defense mechanism that they have is designed to fight whatever it is that you're bringing to the table. So with the expansion of consciousness over time, the system realized that it can no longer just pass off the influence over the masses, the control over the masses, by saying that they get their power from God and they can rule over you. This is why you still have a king and the queen still existing and ruling over the world, while supposedly another kind of power runs and operates the world, because it was transitioning from an old world to a new world. But the game is still the same. The players are still the same. This time, in the new world, instead of the king and the queen in the authority of their kingdom over the masses, instead of that being the centerpiece has now become the human individual itself. The king and the queen deemed authority over the realm, over everything, animals, nature, everything was at their disposal. This is why they could do so much harm to the environment, to people in this existence without having any accountability, because they were deemed by God to do whatever they want. The capitalistic Western world, with the power of science, the God science, they have that same power. They can inflict war. They can even poison you, and you won't even question it. They'll poison your food. They'll poison your water. They'll poison your books. They'll poison your relationships. They poison your entertainment. They poison your generations. They poison your history. They poison your future. They poison your interpretations of reality. Every single thing, even your health care, is poison. It's compromised. It was compromised from the get-go. And if it wasn't compromised from the get-go, it evolved into being compromised or was bought out, taken over by those who compromise.
This is not an iPhone. This is a $3 trillion military-grade lethal weapon aimed straight at your brainstem. If you're watching this, it's because your most primal needs and impulses are being weaponized by to get you to give up all your precious minutes and hours down to the last second. This is done with an invisible asymmetry of power. Justin is the foremost expert on this, and you should watch his whole testimony in front of Congress, but the bottom line is this: you are being fucking harvested, and no one is coming to save you.
So at the center of this reality is now the human. Now some might ask, well, how does this fit with cosmology? Well, in comparison to our ancestral interpretations of reality, the human has never been the center of reality. We have always coexisted in nature with all that is. There's a balance. There's a compatibility. There's an experience that involves everything without the human being at the center. The human at the center of this experience is what's causing all of these problems. Because when you put the human at the center of intelligence, of importance, now you give yourself the authority to dispose of everything else, to protect you.
Living lovely, slowly, living lovely, slowly. I wanna be with you.
This is why the oceans are destroyed. The land, the soil, the animals, the air, the water, everything is at the disposal of humans, secondary to humans. And when you do that, your entire interpretation of the universe, the reality, becomes skewed, just like a victim of Stockholm syndrome. Your entire worldview, your interpretation of the world, your interpretation of yourself, and how you fit in that world. You start to love your enslavement, love the illusions, love the control, reprogramming how you experience, how you see things. You're now seeing the world through the eyes of your enslaver. Now that you're placed at the center of the universe, any kind of evidence, supposed evidence that supports that reality, will now be seen as the gospel.
Rockets are obelisks made to penetrate the dome of God. Operation Fishbowl Dominic. Dominic is of the Lord. Fishbowl of the Lord. And they were shooting rockets. Boom, boom, boom. Trying to penetrate some kind of dome. Well, what kind of dome? Think of a rainbow. It's dome shaped because it's reflecting off the dome. All the stars are fixed in place. That's why they spin counterclockwise. It's a fucking snow globe, not a fucking disc flying through space. Space is fake. All pictures of Mars, Jupiter, that's your religion. It's called heliocentrism. It's a Luciferian religion, sun worship.
So now they can tell you that there's nothing else in reality that we can scientifically observe, which means real. There's nothing real out there unless we say it's real, unless we observe it. We are at the center, not only the center of the world, we are at the center of the universe. There's nothing more important than the human on Earth. And there's nothing more important than the human in all of the entire fucking universe. So if there's nothing more important than the human on Earth and in the universe, then there's nothing more important in humanity than the most important humans in the world. So if there's nothing more important than the most important humans in the entire universe on Earth, then you, as a little speck on a pale blue dot in the entire universe is no more important than a piece of shit falling out the ass of an ant that you just squashed. You are on par of an ant shit compared to the actual movement of what's important, not only on this world, but in the universe. You're insignificant. If there were a hierarchy of importance in this realm, you're not even in the discussion. This is what a heliocentric universe, a dead, empty, plain nothing, no importance, no connection, no communication with anybody else. This is what that kind of universe, this is the relationship that that kind of universe has with power and control over the masses. You can't be aware of your divinity, of who and what you are. You can't be aware of anything close to divinity. Even balance. You can't even be balanced because your balance is divine. You have to be imbalanced to the umpteenth degree in order to be controlled. If you have even the basic human needs within this experience, it would be too much for them to control you. If you had even the basic interpretation of this reality outside of their illusions, it would be too much for them to control you. This is why everything, every single thing that you can perceive in this reality has to be veiled, drenched, soaked, marinated for eons in illusion, in deceit, in confusion, in chaos.
You may now have a degree in computer technology. You may now have a job that pays you $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year. But your fundamental relationship to the European has not changed one whit from the fundamental relationship between our African forefathers and his European slave master. For as you work your computers, you still work to the profits of Europeans. And so the fact that we've moved into the executive offices does not mean we've moved into power. Does not mean that the fundamental power relationship between Europeans and Africans have changed one bit. As a matter of fact, the moving of blacks into the executive offices is an effort to maintain that power and to obscure that power behind a form of neocolonialism. I don't think it is an accident that the desegregation movement and the assimilationist movement in America parallel the neocolonial movement in Africa. As I often tell my classes, you as black students are now being educated to put a black face on white power and to help deceive your people into thinking because you got a job, we have moved forward as a people.
The majority of your living intellectual engagement in this reality will be spent trying to swim and get the hell out of the chaos, trying to keep your head above water. This ocean is too big for me to swim in to understand. Let me just survive. Treading water becomes the norm. People are patting themselves on the back, each other, giving high fives because of how good they can tread in the waters of illusion. This is what your university system is. This is what your intellectual leaders of the world are. This is what your egomaniacs who go around spouting off all the scientific terms that they can, that they saw on History Channel and Discovery Channel. This is what all that stuff is based upon. Seed the illusion. Seed that pride. Seed that ego.
You know, when you go to like CVS or Target or something, it'll be like, donate $5 to blah, blah, blah charity.
Yeah.
I don't say yeah anymore because I learned they've already paid this charity and you're paying the corporation back.
What the hell?
Yeah. So every time they're like, oh, $5 to blah, 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 blah. Target already paid. You're now paying Target back. And
have them living so deeply in themselves. They're in more ways than not unable to get out of that. They are now drowning in their own illusion.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
Keep talking.
I will.
Okay.
Fuck away from me, you classist bitch.
What you gonna do?
I tell you what.
I'm a stupid nigga, everybody.
Yeah,
I'm a
she
stupid
is
nigga.
a stupid nigga.
My place. I'm a stupid nigger.
Go fix your car. And stop honking at people when you don't need
Shut
to.
your bitch ass.
And since you as the masses are locked into all of that chaos, all you need is the slightest sliver of order to be seen as a god.
So if the government wants to fluoridate the water, where are they getting this fluoride from?
Okay, well, the fluoridation chemicals comes from the chimneys of the phosphate fertilizer industry. So fluoride is produced in the manufacturing of phosphate fertilizer, and it's really toxic. So they can't let it out into the air because it pollutes and harms all the agriculture and horticulture and the people around those factories. So they spray water into the chimneys, which combines with the gases, and then it comes out of the chimneys, and they have a toxic waste problem. They can't get rid of it, right? So they can't just put it into a lake or the river or the sea, or the land. Without spending a whole lot of money to detoxify. I don't know exactly how they would do that, but what they do anyway is they take that toxic waste, they put it in tankers, and they sell it to the councils who drip feed it through the public water supply. So that's how they get rid of their toxic waste.
What I'm seeing is that the selling to the world that humanity is the center of all reality is the biggest and most dangerous fiction being sold to the world as nonfiction. It gives those people in control, in power, above humanity. It gives them the authority to inflict on every living being, every other part of the world, inflict on them death, disease, destruction, control, authority that ends up destroying the world and destroying the people and destroying the beings, all to maintain the control of the original illusion that those individuals put out there in the first place, to protect the lie of this fiction.
What I'm saying is the planet's on fucking fire. There are a lot of things we could do to put it out. Are any of them free? No, of course not. Nothing's free, you idiots. Grow the fuck up. You're not children anymore. I didn't mind explaining photosynthesis to you when you were 12, but you're adults now, and this is an actual crisis. Got it? Safety glasses off, motherfuckers.
A demigod will tell you that you are made in his image, because your image in this world is the only thing that matters to a God who rules over this world, to a God that's bigger than this world. That God would not consume itself with the finite image of anything. It has no reason to lock itself into an image. Demigods remain demigods because they maintain the following. The Most High doesn't need a following. It doesn't require homage, because the Most High is aware that that which is paying homage is an expression of itself. Those gods that require anything require it for a reason. You have to ask yourself, why? What is that reason? In this world, the reason is to control. Kings and queens share false information to maintain control over the masses as God. Their influence keeps people orders of magnitude away from seeing that the God that they send their prayers to, the God that they envision, that they image, that they see as real, that God is in hiding. Because seen in the light of the Most High, even in the ultimate intelligence of the human experience, even seen in that light, a demigod, a false God, will be seen for what it is. This is why people need to be so dumbed down with illusion and mistruth, because if they are even the slightest bit intelligent, they will not submit. They will not allow themselves to be controlled. So in closing, this is why you have an intellectual cleansing going on right now. It is to maintain nothing less than the control and the manipulation of the minds of the masses. Keep people in a bubble, keep people confused, locked in chaos, keep them dumb. So you don't have to be so smart to be their leaders, to be their lords, to be their rulers. Keep people in a haze, keep people insecure, intellectually insecure. That will control the masses and the generations of masses for years to come. Make them the center of the universe, and then make yourself the ruler over the masses of people who are the center of the universe. You become God. They become kings, they become queens. Now you've made a micro universe to rule over as the God. Turn your followers, turn your ilk into kings and queens, into gods. with little to no power, so that they may submit to the kings and the queens and the gods who are of ultimate power, universal power, the power to destroy, the power to influence, the power to genocide, the power to cleanse, the power to dismiss, control the narrative. And anybody that attempts to even question that narrative will be destroyed. And if you try to share information that questions that narrative, we will destroy it. We will remove it from the consciousness of the masses. You will not be allowed to share that perspective.
CDC agrees with NRC that it is apparent that fluorides have the ability to interfere with the functions of the brain and the body by direct and indirect means.
Yes, CDC in connection with the Intergovernmental Work Group.
It's correct to say that CDC does not have any data on the tolerable upper fluoride intake for neurotoxic effects for infants.
Yes.
Okay. And you see how the definition also includes toddlers. So CDC does not have any data on the tolerable upper fluoride intake for neurotoxic effects on toddlers.
That's true.
Okay. There's been 2 studies now from the Doctor Who's birth cohort in Mexico City, and there's been 2 studies from the Canadian cohort that Dr. Lanphier has been working on. All 4 of these studies have found significant and large associations between early life fluoride exposure and adverse neurodevelopmental effects.
What makes a king and a queen today is their ability to have financial dominance, control, the ability to do whatever they want in the whole world. They have the resources, the land, the ability to inflict their will over every and anybody they want to. That's what makes a king and a queen in today's world.
I know they stage those terror attacks. You know what it's like to gut up to this and go out every day and go past the peer pressure and come out day one and say 9/11 was an inside job and lose most of the radio stations I was on. You know what it's like to go to sleep every night knowing you work for a bunch of psychotic killers and you bastards are probably going to end up killing me one day. You know what it's like knowing you've ruined my life. You know what it's like, you sons of bitches. I'm tired of your crap. You commit evil, you're part of an evil system, and we're standing up against you. And the Republic is going to defeat you in the end. Some of us won't make it personally through this, but a lot of us are. And in the end, you are going to be brought to justice.
They elevated that form of interaction, of control, from a select few to a larger few, only to install into the world this identity of godhood, a secret society of gods that are controlling the kings and the queens. And by their existence, they remove the power of the king and the queen. It's like putting another piece on the board. If you're playing chess and you're winning, and the other side says, okay, well, here's a new piece on the board. You got your rook, you got your knights, you got your king, you got your queen. Now I'm going to install a god piece on the board. What does that do? Whatever it wants. Well, I can't do anything with my king and queen anymore. Well, the game has changed. Become a god. Get your god piece. Or shut the fuck up. Adjust to the game or don't play. And when your pawns and all the other pieces on the board start exposing this reality, exposing that they're just adding pieces to the board, illegally removing pieces from the board, changing the rules of the game, adjusting the shape of the board. When you expose that, and those words are not only dismissed by the God piece, but they're dismissed by even the kings and the queens who are playing that game. You have kings and queens on the board defending the fact that this asshole created this God piece. They are defending their own enslavement. Because a little enslavement maintains their control, their power over the masses who are enslaved. So in their eyes, it's better to be a king and a queen over the masses of peasants and jesters. It's better to be a king and a queen than to be one of them in the presence of a god. So your class must be maintained. Your impoverishment must be maintained. Your chaos must be maintained. Your illusion must be maintained. Your ignorance must be maintained. And this is why you have many of those kings and queens who are well off and aware of the information, the truth, and won't say one single word. Because at any moment, their kingdom could all come crashing down. Because either the God piece can take over and crush them, or the world can actually change. And they will be seen exactly as they are. No different than anybody else. And they are scared to fucking death of that happening. So they will play dumb. They will keep their heads down. They will stay quiet. They will look the other way. And they will maintain their false sense of security and their lordship over you by any means necessary.
We just sent $100 billion of your tax money to Israel. Yep, your tax money is helping so many people. So you telling me y'all can afford to send 100 billion of them bitches somewhere else? And I can't even afford to fucking live? But your tax money is hard at work for the people. Oh my fucking God, where are my manners, Mr. President? I've been working 60 hours a week every week for my whole fucking life just to blow up a hospital. Good investment. Thank you so much, bitch. I can't even afford to eat a goddamn fucking meal and you talking to me about this stupid shit. Why is this fucking country so selfish? Bitch, let me tell you something. It costs $3,000 to rent a fucking dugout in this bitch. The price of food going up and wages ain't doing shit. But because shit keep going up, not only is the wages not going up, the shit we can buy with them motherfuckers, the amount of things is going to fuck down. Motherfuckers ain't got health care. If I get hurt, I die. Because I can't even afford to die. And you got the nerve to call me fucking selfish, you stupid bitch. Like, nah, let me get this shit straight, though. So you sending hundreds of times the money it would take to fix the problems in this bitch somewhere else to fund a fucking genocide. But because that don't make me want to wrap an American flag around my chest and shit up my fucking back, I'm the one that's selfish.
And until the masses of people realize that that's exactly how they're working, nothing's going to change. And when you get to that space, you'll realize that they don't have to change. In fact, they're irrelevant. Waiting for them to change is like waiting for your cousin or your brother or your mother or your father to change. It's redundant. It's ridiculous. And ultimately, it's irrelevant.
What people think. It's like, just because I like it, that doesn't give it any value. Like, as an artist, if you like it, that's all of the value. That's the success comes when you say, I like this enough for other people to see it. Not other people like it so it's successful. That doesn't mean anything because that's other people liking it is out of your control. All that's in your control is making the thing to the best of your ability. It's all an offering to God. And if you're making an offering to God, you're not thinking about, oh, what's the budget? Or I hope this segment of the audience is going to like it. We don't think like that. It's a higher vibration. We're making the best we can make to the best of our ability out of love and devotion. That's what it is. And there is no, I'm changing it for someone else, because it can't be better than this devotional act that we're doing.